I think we'll get started, and then Edye can catch up when she gets here, because we're scheduled 6 to 7. So, welcome everybody. Appreciate you being here. I'm Trevor Squirrel, for those of you that don't know me, although I think I know most of you, maybe not all of you. And I've been a representative in the district here. This will be my 8th year. I've been doing that. Edye Graning, who's my district mate, will be here. This is her first biennium, her second year in the biennium. I think she's enjoying it, but I won't speak for her. Her main committee is Commerce and Economic Development, and my primary committee is Appropriations. So my committee appropriates all the money that comes into the state, whether it's taxes and fees and things like that, which is general fund, or whether it's federal dollars, or in the case of the last few years, most of you have heard about COVID-related monies like ARPA and stuff like that, which is quite a slug of money that came into the state, special funds and things like that. So typically, the way we conduct this meeting is we do introductions and then speak a little bit to the committee work that we do and what's going on right now. It's early in the session, of course. And then it's really about questions that you folks might have for us, or comments. It doesn't have to always be questions, or thoughts and feelings about what's going on or what's not going on in Montpelier. One of my other main committees is the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. I'm the chair of that committee. We're the committee that when legislation is passed and it requires agencies and departments to do rulemaking to implement legislation, we're in the position of evaluating whether they're following the Administrative Procedures Act and following legislative intent, things like that. But back to the Appropriations Committee. As I said before, we're the ones who build the budget on a year-to-year basis. But what we do when we come back the first year, the first part of our session, is we take the budget that we passed well, we were in session in May, but it started July 1st. And that would have been what we call the fiscal year 24 budget, which runs from July 1st to June 30th of this year, okay? But what happens when we come back in at the beginning of the year, the administration presents a budget to us, which is what we call a budget adjustment, which is where departments and agencies see where they are because they're sort of midstream in their budget year and say, well, we need to make adjustments to that budget, right? Or in the case of what happened in July where we had the major flooding event, particularly in central Vermont, but obviously just north of us it was quite devastating. Then there are expenses and costs associated with that. Even though there's FEMA money and government support to work with that, there's generally at a minimum a 10% match. So we had about $680 million flood loss in that event in July. So that's about $60 million we have to come up with, right? Or how we're going to appropriate the money in order to pay down or bring down the FEMA dollars and things like that. So that's the process that my committee just went through across all the departments in state government. And we just voted out that budget adjustment, and we'll be taking that to the floor, the House floor, tomorrow and Friday for approval from House members. House members will have a chance to create or offer amendments to the work that we've done. We've run this by all the committees of jurisdiction. We've had them weigh in on things that they agree with what the administration proposed or not, and or other things that they think need to be addressed. We try not to do regular budgetary things in the budget adjustment. Over the last few years, budget adjustment has been close to $100 and some million in each one of these cycles. Before the pandemic, you'd be lucky to have $20, $30 million in budget adjustment. It's just the nature of what we've been going through the last few years. So it'll go from us, it'll go out to the Senate eventually, and then we'll come back and there'll be a conference committee to reconcile differences between the Senate and the House. Hi, Edye. And then we just received the governor's recommend on the fiscal year 25 budget, which will start July 1st of this year, 24, through June of 25. So we're starting through that process right now as a committee. That's approximately about a $8.7 billion budget that we'll be working on. I was just sort of telling him where we were, at least in my committee.
Great.
And so, timing is
everybody.
impeccable.
Can I ask you a quick question, Trevor, before we?
Yes.
So, the budget adjustment, how does that show up, how does that get paid?
It gets paid, well, it gets paid through carry forward monies. Let me explain. There'll be a couple different ways that can happen, right? So one of the things that's in the budget adjustment is we'll also see monies that were earmarked or appropriated for FY23, which would have ended last
Yep.
end of June. So there's a certain amount of money that carried forward and drops to the bottom line, right? Let's say $60 million.
Yep.
But we also, twice a year, we have two economists, one that works for the legislature and one that works for the administration. And it's a consensus forecast. And it happens in January and it happens in July. And what that consensus forecast is how much money the state has to budget. So we just had a consensus forecast a week and a half ago. And we came in, we're gonna have $29 million more in order to utilize in the budget adjustment. So between carryover funds and things like that. Now, they could have come back and said, you're $9 million in the hole.
Right.
And then we're saying, then you might have to do some cutting of your budget because a lot of that work has been done before we get the forecast. But we have to balance the budget, it's a requirement. Okay, so whatever that forecast is, whatever that number is, that's what we have to budget to.
Build that into.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Edye Graning. I apologize for being late. I was trying to squeeze too many meetings into one day, and the roads were not good. So thank you all for being here. I am in my the second year of my first term. I serve on Commerce and Economic Development Committee. Am I talking about what I'm doing in my committee? We have spent time on the baby bonds program, where that's coming out of our committee. We're looking at setting up a sister state program, so an official way for Vermont to work with countries or provinces or states around the world and what that would look like for tourism, cultural exchange, business exchange, those kinds of things. Today, we spent a lot of time on workforce development and what the workforce development system is for our state and how the executive director's job for workforce development should be set up. And so we spent all day on that. And I'm sure there are a couple of other things that our committee has been way busier than we were before. The two more things. We're trying to track all of the workforce development funds that we have been putting into the budget 2 years ago and last year and make sure the money actually went out, because what we're hearing from folks in the field is that money that we have, that the legislature appropriated for nursing, for example, for stipends for folks to keep people in the field, hasn't been paid. And so we're trying to understand how much of the things that we have been putting into workforce development is working, how much hasn't gone anywhere yet, what's going on. So we started that work today and we'll be continuing with that. And then our big bill for this year that we will be starting on next week is data privacy and how all of the information that we put out into the world on our phones, on our computers, is protected, and so that there is less fraud for Vermonters and there are more double checks that we can make sure that we keep all of that. I think those are our big things.
I'm going to go off of what you just talked about,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
When I was talking before about carry forward, I meant to say reversion. Okay, and I'll differentiate between reversion and carry forward.
Mm-hmm.
Carry forward is money that comes out of it that didn't get used up, and this is what Edye was referring to, And we're concerned also in our committee about how much carry forward there is right now. But the carry forward gets to carry forward into the next budget year. It doesn't revert to the general fund. So what happens if a particular department has $10 million in carry forward, the administration may say, well, you can keep 5 because you can still use it, or you have grants to still expend, but 5 of that is going to revert. It's a reversion that drops to the bottom line, okay? The carry forward stays with the agency or department. But those are the kinds of questions we ask too, is we just got a report of all the carry forwards for all the line items in the budget. And it's I don't know, it's what?
Too much.
$300 or $400 million worth of carry forward. And so we're asking ourselves, why is that? And I think a big part of that is workforce. We don't have enough people to do the work, okay?
So you can't spend the money because.
So we can't spend the money because we can't process the money. And there's a lot more money flowing through the agencies and departments right now because of the ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan. We had almost, we had $1 billion, right, in just that slug. And right now, we have to obligate all that money by the end of '24 this year. Otherwise, the feds come back in and grab it back. And right now, the number is about $300 million is still unobligated. So we've got a couple things working here.
We did
because of
learn that
both
we
the
can
carry
use-
forward
yeah,
and that's not even part of the carry forward. The ARPA money's not even part of the
Right.
carry
Separate,
forward.
right.
It's separate. It's accounted for differently. So it's a big issue for us right now. But we're monitoring it as Edie's committee is in a different way. But we're both actually monitoring what's going on there. With that, questions, comments,
Yeah.
concerns?
And if you could tell, I know some of you, but I don't know all of you, your name and what town you live in, that would be great.
I'm Nathan Goldman. I live in Underhill, the Underhill Center. I talked with Trevor on the phone earlier in the week, and I think my wife emailed you as well. Her name's Ann. Linda, she couldn't make it tonight. But, and I've just, over the last, it's really been over the last several years, but really this year it's hit really hard to see what's going on with homelessness in Chittenden County and particularly in Burlington. And I know that everybody's doing a lot of work on housing and dealing with the housing crisis, and it is in the news. But I've been astounded that the direness of the situation doesn't seem to be landing on people in general, and particularly the city of Burlington. I think they've grossly mismanaged the way they're handling it in a way that is cruel, to be perfectly honest. If there were 100 people who didn't have housing because of a flood, and they were, middle-class folks, I think we saw this with the flooding that's happened, the state or the municipalities would be figuring out some way to take care of it in a short-term manner that would just be about survival. I don't see that happening right now. And I know my perception is, I've interacted with people in the streets, not as much as others. I've heard a lot secondhand, so I take everything with a bit of a grain of salt. But I've more and more been seeing, it's been corroborated by other people, and I've talked to some people who are working every day as their jobs to work with people in the streets, and they say that my perception is accurate. The city of Burlington is relying on a reputation of crime and a reputation of drug addiction, which is totally true. There's a lot of mental illness out there, but what the usual people who have dealt with homelessness for years in the city of Burlington are, what I'm hearing is that they don't have any capacity to deal with the level of things that are going on. They're dealing with people who are in their 80s that are depending on diapers You know, that's not what usually is happening. You know, there are other resources that should be helping people like that. And it's basically just in the news as we have a homeless problem, which we've had for a number of years. That's what I see. For example, the city of South Burlington destroyed some people's campsites on a private lot in South Burlington off of Joy Drive a couple weeks ago. And they basically went there during the day. People were not in their tents because there is some shelter available during the day. They did this while everybody knows that there's no beds anywhere in Burlington, and they're doing it when it's incredibly cold out, and you know, people are living on the edge of survival. And the news coverage shows the cops carefully picking up needles, and they highlight that. And somehow, I think in people's minds, that makes it a totally different thing. Oh, there's just a bunch of addicts. But they're taking people's stuff. In a lot of cases, they are throwing them away, which is illegal. They're supposed to hold them for 30 days and allow people to get them. I've met people who had sleeping bags, who had tents, who had clothing, and they're gone. They have to figure out something else. And there's no beds available. So what are they doing when it's, you know, 20 degrees, 15 degrees, like it was, you know, over this past weekend? Nobody is providing any option for them at all. And I don't understand why the state isn't treating this like an emergency that it is. And the city isn't as well. Burlington just took down a bunch of tents on Battery Park in a similar fashion. And they say they're trying to figure out a way to provide housing for them temporarily, but there's no housing for them. So these folks are being uprooted from a temporary spot, and they have nowhere to go. So they're just going to settle somewhere else. And a lot of people are just dying. And it's nobody really cares. It seems like, in general, it's not on the level of it being an emergency. I have a lot of thoughts about how this started, for sure. I'd be, you know, I don't want to go on and take up other people's time, but I feel like I want to raise the alarm a little more of this being like, this should be at the level of an emergency. I don't understand why the governor hasn't declared some sort of state of emergency.
Yeah, well, Nate and I did chat the other day and talked about it, and my talking about all the investments we're making and the investments we just passed or passing in the BAA doesn't solve that particular specific issue. And I can't speak to South Burlington and what Burlington are doing. You're right, there's certain rules that they're supposed to follow. If they're not following it, I've shared that with the chair of Health Human Services and some of your comments and things like that. So I hear you. It's complicated. I think from the legislators' standpoint, we've been somewhat frustrated by the lack of action on the part of the administration. It's been too easy for, it would have been, I don't even want to go there. They've been reticent to do the planning to help solve this problem. I don't think you totally solve this problem. I think there are elements and situations that you're just not, it's not 100% kind of thing. Certainly the substance use issue is just skyrocketing. That's a major issue. And mental health issues have been with us for quite some time. So, and we're working on it. We put another $20 million into the budget adjustment. The governor's recommend has another $17 million. We've put probably $300 million into housing in the last 3 years, which is tremendous investment, but it isn't solving that problem. Not as quick as it should be. And I don't have all the answers. Part of that is workforce too, right? I mean, you look at designated agencies like the Howard Center and the kind of role that they play in the community, and their ability to provide services, they've had to cut back programming, not because of funding, but because of workforce.
Yeah.
So, not an answer to it,
Yeah.
not a solution, but.
Can I just
Yeah.
add, I really appreciate you bringing that up here in Jericho and Underhill, where we're not facing those problems. And I really appreciate that you're saying that that's still a problem for us, because I think sometimes we turn a blind eye to things that aren't happening directly in front of us. And I think, so I just want to appreciate that you're bringing that up. And it's a multifaceted problem, and it's not a simple problem. And, one of the root causes, right, as Trevor mentioned, we don't have enough housing. Another root cause, we don't have enough support for people who need it. For whatever they need, we don't have enough support right now in the state. And it's really hard for a lot of us to see so much money being spent and so little progress happening. And we still have this problem that we have people in our community, right, in our larger community, that we have to take care of, and we have to help them as much as they're willing to be helped. So I think that, yes, like all of this, yes, and I'd be happy to talk more offline with you. And I thank you. Please, thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks for listening. And I do, it occurs to me that maybe it isn't as much of a problem in outlying areas of Chittenden County, but that doesn't mean it won't be.
Correct.
And I think Burlington's inability to provide, like, I've heard in Portland, Maine, that they've actually set aside areas for people to camp, because they just need a place to go, and it's more central, and they can help people more when they're not spread out. But if I were unable to find housing and I were familiar with the area, I might consider coming out somewhere where I could be a little off radar, if it was close enough to a place I could get some food, and and if that is the case, I'm not saying that as if I'm afraid of it, from a safety point of view. I'm saying it as if then the burden is on us in our community to help folks. If it gets worse, it probably is going to spread this way, and that's why I think that on a state level it should be looked at the same way. If there was a local storm that knocked a bunch of people out of their houses, there's a long-term solution, but what are we doing over the winter to make sure that people aren't freezing to death? That's the way I look at it.
Thank you.
And I'll try to let others talk here. Thank you all for your patience.
Other folks?
I kind of have a question. I know there's a lot of homeless people around, and everybody says Vermonters. How many of them are truly Vermonters?
I don't have the data. I know there's been a conversation, there was a conversation about, not so much up in Chittenden County, but down in Rutland, that folks were, a lot of people in the hotel motel program, which is kind of wide open it's been sort of reined back in terms of eligibility goes, that a lot of folks were from New York, let's say. But when you look at the data, it didn't support that. Were there folks from New York? Yes, but it wasn't an overwhelming number of folks.
I can give you anecdotally that it's a mix.
Yeah.
I mean, I met a lot of people on the streets who grew up in different places around.
Well, he
the
might have been
state,
from other
Newport
places,
or-
but still here and then become homeless, right?
Yeah.
So,
And then there are people who have moved here, the way I did, from Massachusetts, 40 years ago.
I consider you a Vermonter. You've
exactly,
been here
anyone
for-
who's lived here.
For 10 and that is the question.
Jerry Aiken.
Is your question, so sort of one of the things that I've heard, sort of anecdotally and on the internet and in few forums, is the idea that Vermont gives so much, works so much with the homeless community, that people are coming to Vermont because they can get better services here than they can in Massachusetts. Is that the kind of thing that you're asking about?
No, that's primarily so. My son-in-law used to work for the Howard Center. He was, I'm not sure what you'd call him, but he had a certain number of clients and stuff like that. And he had at least one that I know of, that when it became fall, he wanted his bus ticket to California, to Arizona, where it was warmer climates. Come springtime and Vermont turned nice, he wanted his bus ticket back to Vermont. And I'm not sure where the money came from, but apparently this fella did this, and he did it for years. You know, so I just wonder, you know, is Vermont really helping out, or are they just handing out services type of situation?
I can
I'm
look,
not gonna
yeah.
say it's in all cases. No, there's people out there that do need help and stuff like that. That I know. I've lived here for 80 years, and but it just seems ridiculous that we seem to be a magnet for.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the data supports it. I'll dig into it a little bit, but I don't think many people would come to Vermont thinking that it's a great place to be homeless.
Not this year.
Not any year, right? Like I mean, just, you know, so I think that when you're homeless, your goal is food, right? Your goal is safety. Your goal is much more close to here than it is where in the world should I go, right? Like, so I think that it's a different way of
I mean,
functioning.
you
And we're
see-
lucky to be able to not have to
You
think
hear
that.
about the homeless and the various places where they're finding places to sleep and stuff like that. And yet you got the panhandlers are out, especially in Williston type of situation with signs that I'm homeless, willing to work. If you're willing to work, why are you standing there? There's all sorts of jobs. Granted, they're probably not high-paying jobs. They're probably minimum wage type of situation. Construction's going on right now. They need flaggers. You see signs all over the place, help wanted. I don't know. Some of the people I don't think are what do I want to say? Really and truly looking to take care of themselves or looking for somebody else to take care of them.
Well, I think there's always gonna be some of that.
Oh, sure. Good gracious, when I first moved out here in Underhill, was it the poll tax or something like that? As far as poverty was concerned in the town took care of the people in the town. Type of situation. They knew who needed help and would do such things. And then it was suddenly, oh, can't do that anymore. Throw them out into the society and let society take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
No, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Bob DeVos, I live over on Milo White in Jericho. Just a couple of questions on the ARPA funds. Is there any pie chart that shows where the money is going as far as how it's being divided up? One, I'm gonna jump around here, but I'll try to be really brief. One thing with the ARPA funds, personally, I would like to see more money being spent going to, and I'm gonna get the agency wrong, so I apologize, but is it natural resources, I guess, that's in charge of water?
There's a lot of money in the Agency of Natural
Yeah,
Resources.
I know there's funds available for, depending on your income, for septic and,
Yep.
wells, this type of thing, but if that coverage could possibly be broadened or something, to replace a septic system could be like 30,000 or something in that range or whatever, and I personally may not qualify because of income, not that I have any great income or anything like that, but if they could broaden the scope and helping on that, because as a retired person, if I ever reach that point, which I probably will be soon, because septic systems only work for 30-plus years or something if you're lucky, to be retired on a fixed income, 30,000 plus is quite a bit of money to sink out there. So I'm just wondering if that could be,
Can I speak
if
to
there's
it?
some kind of, pie chart you can look up online, just seeing where the money is going, what's proposed or something. That's just more transparency, I guess,
Yeah.
is something.
I hear two questions. One is the distribution of ARPA money,
Yeah.
and I have your email, so I can send you the documentation that I have, okay?
Okay. The other, I just had two others, then I'll.
Well, no,
Oh,
and I don't want to, and the other one, there's a separate program that is not ARPA money, it's general fund money, it's called Healthy Homes Initiative. And that's, it is a fund for low-income folks. I don't know what the breakdown is for that. But it's for wastewater and drinking water systems for reinstalling or whatever. So that's something you could probably look up online at A&R, okay? Healthy Homes Initiative. But I'll send you the information because I had asked for an update on ARPA and how that money's being spent, what's obligated, what's not. And in the case of A&R, I have it by program, across all their programs. So, because A&R is part of my budget portfolio and appropriations. You had other questions?
I was going to say, before you go, we've emailed?
Oh, okay.
Yes, you have emailed me,
Oh,
we have
yes, yeah.
emailed? So nice to have a face to the,
Yeah,
to the
I appreciate
name.
your response, thank you.
I just wanted to also say that the ARPA money is from the federal government, and there are very strict and clear ways that it can be spent, so we can't change that. But the federal government did recently update what it can be spent on, so we could find all of that for you also. So just wanted to add those two pieces. But yeah, what are your next?
Just two quickies, and again, I'm a lay person, I'm not up on this as I should be. But the baby bond program and, what's the other, the Dr. Dinosaur program. There's, in my personal view, where I don't think Vermont can sustain the amount of money we're putting out for social programs. Not that the social programs are not needed, but with our aging population, with a very low workforce, nothing is clear yet as far as the quote 18% school sales tax issue that we're all facing, some large, tax bill coming up. I mean, I wish there was more clarity on that, and how, I know some people say the governor, and they may be right, should put out a strong initiative on, and lead the way on that, if you will. But with the Democrats having the supermajority in Montpelier, I really don't see what they're putting forward either to handle that 18% plus whatever tax increase we're gonna handle. And as far as Dr. Dinosaur, the program, the age limit, I believe, was 18, now it's going up to 26. Well, my concern is who is allowed into the program, and it's a delicate subject, but there is a large segment that's coming to the country that are migrants, that are not citizens. I'm not sure how, if some come to Vermont, if they would just automatically be qualified, what restrictions would be put on that. But if you're in the program if you up it to age 26, if you have someone in a low income that qualifies, and God love them if they deserve it and they need it, I'm not disputing that. But how do you gauge someone, say, from 18 to 26 that may go out of state, they may get a good job, but they're still under the radar with the program, and still the family, if you will, can collect the money. I just don't know the checks and balances of, and say if you're in it for 26, if you're in it, when you jump in the program, are you in it for the entire 26 years? Is there any checks and balances that if you're out of the program for I did well for 3 years between age 23 and 26 or something, and I went over the income, but the state doesn't catch that because and they still think I'm in the program. I mean, do you get credit for the full 26 years you're in the program? I guess.
I don't know the details on the Dr. Dinosaur program and the expansion of that program.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that almost every program that I'm aware of that we do that type of work with people with income sensitivity, generally have redeterminations every year.
No,
We just
every six
don't.
months. Every 6 months.
Well, it
it's
could be,
more often
okay,
than I
every
thought.
6 months, but
Right.
I'm not sure if that's every program, but yeah.
I have got people in various programs, and
Sure.
it's a pretty constant flow.
Yeah, but
of
there's a
double
redetermination.
check,
That's,
where
that's,
you at, are you still eligible?
that's the point I'm making,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And the baby bond issue,
Before you leave it, Dr. Dinosaur is medical coverage. Nobody's getting money.
No one's getting money.
They're getting their health,
yeah.
their health is covered, right? So you can get a doctor's visit once a year. You can, if you have a major condition, that's covered and you're not stuck with giant medical bills. So that's, nobody's getting money off of that. So just to be,
But how is it paid for? I mean, someone has to pay the bill. I mean, I'm not disputing
Yeah.
the need for it. I'm not gonna go there or whatever.
it just sounded like you were asking, what are people doing with the money they're getting? And I just wanted to
Oh,
be
no,
very
I know
clear
they
that,
don't- right.
that
I know
it's
they
a-
don't get
okay.
cash, right. But if the program quadruples, if you add to the age from 18 to 26, how can the state have some type of bureaucracy that keeping up with this? I mean, it's just,
I don't know the specifics around that particular piece, do you?
I don't know a lot of the
Yeah.
details. I know that there is a federal match, there's some state money, there's some federal money. Right now, that the reason it's going to 26 is because families who are covering their children can stay on their health insurance to age 26, and that seems like an equalizer because we don't have health insurance for all. So how do we make sure that our most vulnerable folks that get kicked off their health insurance but don't yet have a job that has benefits get health insurance, right? So that's what this is about. And if you have health insurance from a job, you're no longer eligible. So there are lots of checks and balances here. I don't know the detail on this one, but I can look into it.
I mean, unfortunately, as a senior citizen, I pay for my health care out of, that's deducted from Social Security, possibly other incomes or whatever and stuff, but, I mean, I know, and I'm not disputing the needs again, don't get me wrong, but, I mean, the more I pay out, I'm glad others that are needy benefit, there's no question about that, but if I, as a senior on a limited income, I don't see what's being done to help seniors as far as where our expenditures, our taxes are going up. But I don't see any huge assistance, even a tax break, if you will, on some incomes, if you will, that could be more my money to spend as I think I could spend it better than the state can spend it or whatever. So, again, not disputing the need for people, but there is a segment of the population that, my money is going out and I'm on a limited income, so where does the state see how much, people can keep doling out money, if you will? I mean, and again, I don't dispute the needs for people or whatever, so.
Want to respond to your baby bond question? That's being discussed. I think it's a new bill. It's a new initiative out of the treasurer's office.
Yep.
Nothing's been decided about that at this point in time.
Yes, but we all know, to be honest, again, I mean, the Democrats have a super majority, so, it can just roll and get rubber stamped through.
And
mean,
I have to
it's-
take issue with that
Yeah.
statement.
Okay, if I'm wrong, please.
Okay, there are a lot of us that are part of that supermajority that evaluate these new proposals. I've had a conversation with the treasurer with problems I've had about this proposal.
But-
Thank you.
But when it comes down to it, the vote will be yes for the baby bond program. You know, I can almost guarantee you both will vote for it, and I'm not disputing there are good.
I'm
elements
excited
in it.
about it, I'll be honest with you. I think that
what
it's
is it?
really necessary. What is it?
What is it?
It's a program that is being discussed right now, that would, so it'd be something we would add for children who are born in Vermont at poverty levels, so they would have to be eligible for the Dr. Dinosaur program, so at really low poverty levels. I believe, I should know this better, but we would put $1,000 aside for them at birth. That money would be managed by the treasurer's office. It would grow over time. And when they're 18, 23, 26, give me a number, I don't remember.
They can go up to 30.
30, yeah, somewhere in that
Somewhere,
range.
yeah.
They can use it for 4 different things. They could use it for education. They could use it to buy a house. They could use it for a business purpose, to start a business, and they could use it to put for their retirement, whatever money that is. So we would be putting $1,000 for every child that is born at that very low poverty level aside per year. And if they don't need it, or not need it, if they move out of state and don't collect it, they don't collect it, right? Because that's time. We're hoping that this helps to equalize some of the generational wealth that folks don't have. It's a drop in the bucket, but it's an exciting opportunity to help people who really need it, who won't need to be on, hopefully, social services for the rest of their lives because they have this money, right? Because they get this education, because they have this opportunity to buy a house and not be homeless. So, or something like, I mean, it's a small thing that we can do.
Is all the money have to be spent within Vermont? Do they have to attend college in Vermont?
It
Buy a
hasn't
house in
passed
Vermont?
yet. It hasn't even been fully written
Well,
yet.
It's in committee
It's
for
in
discussion.
committee. It's
so
in
those
my
details-
committee.
Those questions will be
I
asked.
I don't have,
I
yeah.
did write our state senator on that, and I won't name the person because it's not fair, the person's not here. But all they did is defer to the, you know, please, if you have further questions, go to the, you know, Treasury office or whatever it is or something. In other words, I don't think they could answer the questions, and I know it's early on.
Right, because we don't know, because there have been people saying, maybe we need to have all of the money spent in Vermont. Maybe that limits people too much, maybe, so it's not written yet. It's not,
Right.
it hasn't
And-
passed
and
yet.
it would be fine,
It is
too,
in
where
discussion
someone
right now.
wouldn't come back and, well, now I can buy a second home in Vermont or something or whatever if they do, you know, there's a lot of,
But the number of people who are born eligible for Dr. Dinosaur in abject poverty
It's
that are then
tiny.
gonna end up in 30 years buying a second home, if that's our problem, that's a win. I mean,
I'd like
that,
to
I
see
mean,
that Venn diagram.
I mean, that's just not.
I would also say, if the committee's discussing it, you can watch the committee meetings as they're discussing it, and they'll talk about, you know, things that might get amended, like added or taken out or whatever, and you can track that by watching those committee meetings.
Yeah.
It's pretty instructive, and it, you know, if there's a particular issue that's very important to you,
I-
at least
I-
that's my experience.
No, you're right. And I did see your email and your questions. And I would say that probably all but one question I could answer because the committee hasn't had that conversation and haven't had a chance to ask those questions. So for me to say that's how they might decide, it's not information that's usable. So that's just part of that process, right? So.
You had a, well,
Oh, I'm sorry, did you have a, yeah.
I just am looking for your observations. So as just a regular consumer of news, I see the administration saying, oh, you know, we don't have any money, or we gotta be really careful because, you know, things are getting, it's different now than it was during the pandemic when we had all this money. And then I see the legislative leaders basically saying, well, we have more than you think. So this is really not a dire thing, and we need to be careful that we don't overreact. So I'm just curious what your opinions are about this, because as an average person consuming news, I'm like, well, so what am I supposed to, I don't know. I don't know how to respond to some of what the legislature wants to do, because I'm really not sure who's telling the whole story here.
You want me to go first?
I don't know that I have an answer for this, so I
I thought you might.
I-
get a little closer
I-
to
I
it.
have a little bit of an
I
answer, but
understand the
Trevor probably has a better
administration's
answer.
position, okay? We don't want to raise fees, don't want to,
Yeah.
do those kinds of things. And so, we sit here with a big fee increase in DMV fees, right? That's one of the issues that's out here, not just the education thing. Well, there's always been an agreement between the administration and the legislature that every 3 years, the various departments would issue or ask for a fee increase across their permits and their fees and things like that, even if it's just to follow inflationary concerns, right? And when things like that don't happen, which is the case with DMV fees, because this current administration says no fees, no taxes, no increase in taxes, we all of a sudden get to a place like in the transportation fund last year where we had $10 million deficit because we're not raising fees. So we made a decision as a legislature to say, we're going to raise the fees. And they're higher than what people would like, but it's only because they haven't happened over some period of time. And so I think the tension here between, if you will, the way you posed it, administration, legislature, is reasonable fees on a basis that makes sense, usually they're user-based, okay? And also, are there taxes that we could levy? And I know that's a whole conversation and filled with tension and conversation, I get that. That could help us support some of the programming we need to do. That actually, by investing in some things, we actually might save some money. And we don't do it, we end up spending more money to solve problems down the road.
Yeah,
So
and I'll build
that's the
on
best
that
way I
just a
can
little bit.
answer your question. So I think you're hearing that tension, right? So,
And then, just to add to the DMV fees, we get 4 or 6 federal dollars for every dollar of transportation money we raise in the state. So by holding those DMV fees artificially low, or by not letting them increase with cost of living increases, we're actually harming Vermont because we're getting significantly less federal money into that. So I think there are ways that we're also looking at that when we're looking at fees. But your overall comment, the big comment, I think is really important because, of course, there's way less money this year than there was the last 2 years because of that influx, thank you, it's late, of federal money that we had. So yes, there's less money, and so we have to be more judicious about how we're spending it. It doesn't mean there's no money, it just means we had record budgets the last couple years. We're not gonna overspend, but we still have a budget, we still have programs, we still have opportunities to make the lives of Vermonters better. And so that's what we're trying to do.
yeah. And we being those like in appropriations and what have you, have try to be very careful about making sure that the additional federal dollars that flowed into the state as a result of COVID, that they're really one-time programs at best, maybe a couple of years, not ongoing programmatic things that when that money dries up and is gone, all of a sudden we're off a cliff and how are we going to fund these things? Has it been perfect? No, but I think we've pretty much adhered to that principle. So yeah, there's been a lot of money flow, but we've made investments. Think about the $250 million we've put into broadband, and leveraged even more additional federal dollars to do that. And a lot of people have benefited. Vermonters are benefiting from that investment.
And I think the last thing I want to say, because I think this is really important, is that when you have something that's more and it's taken away, it feels like a loss, right? And so we are all going to feel that loss. And I think the first time we're going to feel it, and what we're hearing, is that our tax rates, our education rates are going up from last year. Well, last year and the year before, we bought them down because there was a surplus of money. So we had artificially low education tax rates for the last 2 years. And I meant to have the numbers with me, but I got stuck. I think our education tax rates, not talking about CLA, but I think our education tax rates this year are going to be roughly the same as they were 3 years ago. So with just a little bit of change. And I think it feels like a loss because it's more than it was last year. But last year was artificially bought down because there was more money there. So I think it's important, right? There is less money. There are fewer programs. There will be, right? But it's because there was extra, not because I don't know. I should stop talking.
I'd like to go back to the.
Well, she had a question
Oh,
back here,
sorry.
if I may. Yeah.
My name is Laura Kimball, I live in Jericho. Wondering if there's any discussion down the road about not taxing Social Security or pensions.
Are you referencing specific pensions?
Mine.
Just one,
Yeah.
Well, because there's been certainly a lot of conversation around military
No, I
pensions and
work
things
for
like
a
that.
city government.
I'm not sure where we are right now with we do have a tax credit for Social Security, but it's not based on the income level.
I really don't know
I
anything
know,
about this
and
one.
I'm not really clear on it, and I don't want to misspeak, but it's not 100%, right? If someone has an income of $100,000 a year, but they have $30,000 worth of Social Security, I don't think that you wouldn't get a tax credit for all that 30,000, right? You'd have to have a lower income level, but I'm not sure where that is. If you want to share me your email address at the end,
And I agree with this gentleman too, being a senior and living here for
Yeah.
over 40-plus years. It would be nice if we got some breaks on some things, like our internet bill, and, I mean, I pay almost $250 for my internet, my phone, my
Yeah.
cable, and being on a fixed income, it would be nice to have some breaks, so.
it would be nice if the companies would offer those breaks to people.
And with me, if you call them and complain, don't worry about
Xfinity?
it.
They do.
Literally, you call
One-
them. you call
once a
them, say,
year.
"You
I
can't pay
think I
this."
called them once and they said, well, we do have a plan that but it's income-based. So
Yeah,
you
but
can
you,
apply for it.
yeah, if you just go and gripe. if you-
Okay, I'm good at griping. Thank you.
No, I don't know that anything's in the works to expand the Social Security exemption at this point, but I just don't know that. But if you
Don't know.
share, give me your email and I'll
Okay,
get
thank you.
information to you.
Appreciate
Would you both promote that, though? Would you both,
What's that?
would you both advocate for that?
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially, okay, I mean,
For
So
me, it
is
would
it-
be.
It means potentially, it's all
yeah.
means.
no, I know.
Income-based, I would be, I feel like, I know that we are really fortunate out here in Jericho and Underhill, and we have a lot of folks who are above average income, right? It doesn't age notwithstanding. And so I think that for the folks that need it, that can't afford it, that were never taxed on that money, I would be open to that. I mean, if the money is, that have already been taxed on the money, if the money has never been taxed, it's just got put aside so that you could have it later when you're at a lower tax, I mean, that is a tax break, right? You're getting the money at a later time in your life when you're making less money. So you're actually overall, the course of your life, paying less
Right,
taxes
but that
on
would be a
that.
separate point. Her concern, and I agree, is if your Social Security or pensions, some pensions maybe be off the, not to be considered, but why wouldn't a tax break, why couldn't that be considered for those on certain pensions and Social Security? And again, you have the veterans thing that just keeps lingering year after year that I believe all our neighboring states offer that. I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong on that or whatever, but
A lot of states do.
there is no, when you're retired and your income is extremely limited and it goes more and more out as expenses go up, taxes increase, social services get expanded for others, if you will, and many need it. I'm not disputing that again, but there's no attention really to the senior population, in my view, or something. I mean, it's good to say you may favor or consider or whatever, but why not say, I think we should draft a bill, and I would favor such legislation. I mean,
Age-based, not income-based?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think first income-based. And, you know, age would be discriminatory, if you will, or something, or whatever, but, I just don't, you know, it's something, I understand, you know, we can all play politics or whatever and stuff like that. I may consider this is a good suggestion, this and that, but would we ever hear, I would propose legislation to make such incomes less taxable or no tax on these certain incomes. I mean, would either of you ever commit to going forward on those lines? I mean, it's nice to say, I'll consider this and that, but yes, I think it should be done, and I will draft legislation in that regard. I mean, I guess that would be a more concrete
Yeah.
answer I'd be looking for if you.
Yeah, and so I'll be transparent with you. I don't know how we tax, and I don't know the incomes that we tax now, and I don't have that information. So I'd want to dig in and say, what do we do now, and where are the needs, and understand that better before I commit to something. Because I think a lot of time is wasted when we write laws about things that are already there, and we have very few folks who can help us write the laws. But
Well, that might lead to the climate initiative program that was passed last year, that money is going out for that, and then to be determined on what will come back, or maybe I don't have that clear or whatever, but wasn't there major legislation passed last year on the climate initiative, that we're gonna pass this with the understanding we don't know how to fund it. So,
is this S5?
Well,
I'm sorry.
this is the Climate Solutions Act he's referring to,
So that's
which went to
another-
the PUC for
Isn't that
consider.
another bee's nest around the corner? I mean, it's nice. I'm not disputing some validity in some programs, some needs, but it just seems the rush is out there to keep
In the case of,
throwing programs forward and not knowing how to pay for them.
in the case of the program you just referenced, it went to the Public Utilities Commission for review, and they're in the process of developing policy and procedure around that. I am not an expert on that particular piece of legislation. Their recommendation will come back to the legislature, and the legislature will then review that and make a decision whether we want to move forward with that and how it's going to be funded or not funded, or what some of the financial elements of that plan will be. That's where we are right now with that plan. It hasn't been decided.
And the same with Dr. Dinosaur. I think if I read part of the legislation correctly, and if I didn't, I apologize, but it says the legislature will allow something like $500,000 to allocate whatever agency to go forward and study this program to see if it can be funded correctly. I mean, I know that's probably a normal procedure, but it seems like we're shelling out a lot of money we want to go forward on these things, but then we don't know how they're going to be paid for. I mean, that's just
Well,
a general perception.
It's not unusual for the legislature and our committee and other committees, or even policy committees, to do legislation and suggest that, well, we're not ready to go there yet, but we suggest that $50,000 or $75,000 or even $100,000 be used to create a study to report back to the legislature on what they find. So that's not uncommon. That particular practice is not going to stop. It's unusual that it's a bigger number than that. So, yes.
My name's Pat Bird, I live up down the road in Jericho. I did want to make one comment, because I have a pension too, and I pay taxes on my pension too, and nobody likes to pay the taxes, but I must say that I would be upset if we moved away from anything other than income-based situation, because personally, it's great, you know, I'm fortunate that I have a pension. Many people are not that fortunate. That pushes my income up, which pushes my taxes up, and that's, like, to me, that's an obligation to the community in which I live. I get benefits for those taxes I pay like anybody else. So I'm never thrilled to pay, but I think that's fair, and I would be, I just think that's where we get the pot of money to do the right thing.
Thank
That's
you for
my-
saying that.
As a voter, that's how I feel.
We're at 7:00, but I don't want to cut off questions. So if folks
I have a
have,
question if you-
at least everyone at least have a chance to ask a question. Dan Steinbauer?
Dan Steinbauer from Underhill. I have interest and enthusiasm for the domestic violence bill that was passed within the last 2 weeks in the House. And, you know, it was coercive control a part of that bill, and I know that the emotional abuse was the highlight, and that's very much needed.
I believe coercive control was the language in the bill,
Okay.
yes.
And what are the odds, or what does the wind say about whether Governor Scott's going to sign it?
I don't know. And just to let everyone know what we're talking about, there was a bill that passed out of the House.
Judiciary.
Out of the House? We passed it on the floor.
Well, no, it came out of the House Judiciary Committee and then on the floor, yeah.
Yeah, so it's in the Senate
Yeah.
now. And it allows for folks who are in domestic violence situations to get, what's the word I'm looking for? Protective orders, protection from abuse orders. Relief from abuse, thank you, orders, not only for physical violence. So it's coercive, controlling, emotional abuse types of behaviors. And this came because there were many cases of folks who would go into court to get the relief from abuse order. They weren't able to get it because they hadn't been harmed yet. And then the next interaction, they were harmed and were harmed very badly or lost their lives. So we're trying to make it safer. So that's what we're talking about here. I don't know, is the answer.
Senate has to, what's the pattern?
Hasn't passed out of the Senate yet. It's in the Senate now in their
It'll be in
judiciary.
Senate
I thought it
Judiciary.
was in the
Yeah.
Senate last year, it was a year carryover.
Thought it was a House.
It's a House
Is it
bill.
a House bill?
It's a House, well,
I
that's a
don't
good
know.
question.
It's a good question.
Anyway, I
It-
could be wrong about that, but I thought that's
Yeah.
what I read, that this was a bill that, you know, is on the desk because the Senate already had.
You
That
could be
was
right
last
about
year.
that.
Yeah, I'm gonna find out.
It's one of the first bills.
can go with another
one of the
question. I'll have an
first bills
answer in
that
a
got
minute.
passed this year, yeah.
Oh, you know, it was a 27. It was a,
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
Senate bill, so you're right.
I'll find out. I don't know
I
if it
think-
was, I don't know if it was H27 or S27, because it was 72 and 27 on the same day. That was fun.
If it was a Senate bill and it passed the House, and I'm not on the floor much. With appropriations, we get a special dispensation when working on budgets. We're not always on the floor, so. But if that was the case, if that was a Senate bill and the House passed it, then obviously both bodies have passed it. But if there are differences in the legislation, then they need to hash out those differences before it goes to the
I was
governor's.
wondering if they
To
changed.
the governor's desk. If they had changed things, then the Senate and them would have to get together. Or what the Senate does, they'll get it back. And then they'll say, oh, we're fine, this is great,
Yeah.
and ship it back to
Right.
us. Or they might make additional amendments to that, so there's a process in there.
Of course.
Yeah.
And you don't have any read on the governor's?
I don't have any
reaction to it?
read on that, no.
Well, the governor has made a point of making safety a primary.
It was
Thing
a
on
House
top.
bill. H27 was a House bill.
Oh, okay, so it's.
So
in
it's
the Senate
just now in
judiciary
the
then.
Senate.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has to go to the Senate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. We're past time, unless someone has a real pressing question. You can always reach out to Edie and I.
Yeah, my
learned a
email's a
lot.
little
Thank you.
backed up right now,
What's that?
so.
I'd say I learned a lot, thank you.
Uh,
It does trigger a few questions, but they don't have to take up any time right now. There's things I need to
Well,
look
feel
into.
free to be in touch, okay?
Yeah, please
All right.
reach out. Thank you.
Thank you both for your
All
work.
right, thank you.